Help Is on the Way for Orchestra is my first orchestral work. It is a symphony, and I would love to hear it performed this June 2024. Yes, I have heard loud and clear that's very unreasonable. I did address that in the last video at the very end, but nevertheless, I would like to hear it in my lifetime. So I want to give updates on Help Is on the Way, where we're at. So here are the topics we're going to discuss. First, I'll just do where we're at. Then I will talk about being featured in my local newspaper. I will then talk about the process of Help Is on the Way getting performed. Then I will talk about an emergency plan, which if you've been watching our Instagram, Help Is on the Way for Orchestra, then you know a little bit about it already. So that's part one. And then part B, I will talk about the orchestra of Barneyjmusic, which is a vision I've had. I have talked about it a little bit on this channel, but very not with maximum openness because of some little blowback I've gotten a couple times when I talk about it, but also some wonderful encouragement. So I want to talk about my vision for the orchestra of Barneyjmusic, and then I want to talk at the very, very end about a delicate subject, something that is often called the third rail, if you know where I'm getting at. It's a topic that gets people electrically charged, emotional, irrational. But I do want to address it because it has come up a couple of times. And just to give a teaser, it rhymes with trace and starts with an R. Okay, so we'll save that towards the very end. And then to wrap things up, we'll talk about funding of the orchestra, the options for getting the Orchestra of Barneyjmusic funded. And then we're done. Or for the hardcore subscribers or anyone else is welcome to stay, I would like to expand upon the vision or the dream that I articulated in last week's episode. Okay? All right. Where are we at? It's hard to say. Okay, it's hard to say. I'm doing the work. I'm emailing orchestras. Okay. I'm talking about Help Is on the Way. I'm talking about my vision. And I'm getting some light interest, meaning they're responding. They're saying, not all of them, okay, it's still a minority, but they're saying, okay, we'd like to know more. But we haven't yet reached the next stage, okay? And of course, I need to give time for them to look at the materials and to think things over. And after about a month, I'll start following up, as well as with the orchestras that have not responded at all. I'll follow up with a different member of the organization, try a different email address, maybe go to the conductor's actual website, not through the orchestra. Maybe try calling people. I do have some phone numbers. But in general, I have to say the only real success is to have it performed, okay? Is to have a real concert, like something real, not just like, oh, it's theoretical, we're emailing, but like there's a date in place and I can invite people to it, okay? That is the real deal. And then we actually have the concert, and then we have a recording. We can discuss, and then we have more concerts, right? I want to talk about being featured in my local newspaper. So if you follow the official Instagram for Barneyjmusic, you have seen some blurbs. I'll be releasing more. So about a month or two ago, I contacted my local newspaper here in Central Jersey and told them that I just come back home. I told them my story in Paris, and then, I had to wait some time, and then they get back to me, and it has now been published. Unfortunately, it is not available online. You have to be in Jersey and be able to, by the time you see this video, I'm sure the next issue of the newspaper will be out. But nevertheless, they did a really, really wonderful job. I don't know what happened to it. Let me get it real quick. Okay, well, couldn't find it. But if you watch the official Instagram, you'll have seen some excerpts from it, some clips. I was featured on the front page, and then it spilled over to a couple pages later. So 2 pages, really nice. And I want to do a whole video where I talk more about that and the success that was, definitely for the arts on a local level. And what I'm hoping is that people in my community will see that and be like, oh yeah, I remember Barney, you know, like, because I left at a young age. I went away to Walnut Hill in high school, so a lot of people forgot about me. They probably never heard of me, right? So I'm hoping that will spark some conversation, especially with local musicians. I also put an ad inadvertently because the interviewer asked what are my goals, and I said my goal is to have an orchestra here in Jersey, okay, is to own my own orchestra, okay, which we're going to talk about that vision in the second part of this video. So overall, being featured in a local newspaper, I think the effects are going to be very long-term. They're going to be hard to measure, but I think it's an important step forward. All right. I want to talk about the process of Help Is On The Way. So I've talked about this maybe in previous videos, but I want to expand upon it and reiterate for people who are just coming in. But what I see with Help Is On The Way, it's not just an orchestra is going to perform it, done. Okay, what I really would like is to have an actual partnership with the orchestra and to show the process. So showing, the first rehearsal, showing the second rehearsal, showing the changes between them, showing, okay, now we're rehearsing this part. Okay, look, we're fine-tuning this section of Help Is On The Way. And just showing the process, and ideally, I'll be able to film and record and share on Instagram, so there's a constant feed of seeing it actually happen. Because of course, many people may still not want to go to the concert unless they have more invested. But you create that investment when you show on a daily basis, multiple times per day. Look at where we're at. Look at the rehearsal. This is what we achieved in the rehearsal. Okay, I think that is a very important way forward for the arts in America, because this is not Europe. In Europe, there is that built-in appreciation for the arts. It is reinforced by the culture. It's reinforced by the many cultural institutions. We do not have that in America. And I think in today's society, people want to see, they need that quick at first. Okay, so I think the key would be to show the rehearsal process and, maybe even interview members of the orchestra if they're down for it. I understand some people are shy, okay, but there's got to be some that are oh yeah, and it doesn't have to be super complicated. It could just be hey, what's the hardest part? Or talk to us about practicing, or just it could be really informal, but I think that would be really awesome. Think of it if you were to see the making of a band, or the making of a video, of a music video, and they show behind the scenes. I think that is something I really would like to do with Help Us On The Way, but it may not be possible depending on the orchestra I'm working with, which leads me to the emergency plan. So I'm beginning to become concerned that I will spend the next 40 or 50 years of my life just waiting for opportunity, waiting for someone else to give me a shot. Even though I'm taking the initiative and sending out those emails, I still have my fate in someone else's hands. Someone else is the decider. I'm not the master of my own destiny. And I think we all can agree we like to be the master of our own destinies to the extent that is possible. And so what I see as an emergency plan, if it becomes clear, as it becomes clear that Help Is On The Way is not going to get programmed, or it's not going to get programmed under ideal conditions or proper conditions. What does that mean? If an orchestra wants to program it, but I have no say in the matter, I don't get to work with the musicians or the conductor, that's going to be a problem, because many times composers do not get proper performances because they do not get to consult. So that's a minor detail for the moment. But the emergency plan is I would like to create an orchestra, a temporary orchestra here in Jersey. I was thinking hiring college students, because, they're not going to be able to commit for, obviously otherwise you need a full-time job, or it could be freelance. But I was thinking, utilizing college students, okay, and this would be paid, of course, here in Central Jersey. And some of the, sorry, I have a note here I cannot read. Yeah, college students. Some of the costs I would need to fund would be an orchestra manager, right? Because I would need to hold auditions. I would need to send out lots of emails. People might have questions about location. You might have to, arrange times. There's got to be a point of contact, and I need to compose and, do other stuff, be the face of Help Us On The Way in a certain way. So I just could see that getting really overwhelming if there was not an orchestra manager. Also, someone to take attendance in rehearsals. I would want to know, like, who are the musicians that are coming early or in time. That's very alarming if someone's late. There's all kinds of things that I would need some kind of support system through the orchestra manager. Also, a conductor. I definitely would like to conduct Help Us on the Way for orchestra. Certainly the first movement I could definitely do. I don't know if I'm going to have the time to learn the other movements. It depends on the situation. If I had a salary, that'd be different. But definitely having a conductor who would be able to step in and do it would be awesome. And maybe we could take turns. I don't know how that would work out, but definitely would need a conductor. Okay. And again, I'm thinking like someone college, someone who, especially people who come from schools that are not, quote, the top, like Juilliard, because I think there's a lot of talent that is ignored just because you don't have the fancy pedigree. So I definitely would be looking for someone who has that, and ideally someone who knows how to communicate with the general public. There are great conductors who are great at conducting but can't communicate to the public, and that's, c'est un bémol, which is in French. Also, I need to pay for the rehearsal space. Okay, I need to pay for the performance space. I would need possibly percussion rental because most, if you have a double bass, a violin, you own your own instrument, you bring it to the rehearsal, you schlep through the metro system for New York City. This would be in Jersey, and you bring your instrument. But for percussionists, it usually exists on site at the rehearsal space, but some rehearsal spaces don't have the percussion, or they might charge you, so then you'd have to rent the percussion. So that's something I'm very concerned about. Another thing is one of my, does everyone get paid the same rate? To me, that seems the most democratic, but the reality is sometimes in orchestras, the leads of different sections get paid more. Based on the writing of Help Us on the Way, I just don't see why that would be necessary, but again, I need to do more research, and I have been doing research. I have been contacting friends, and they're giving me responses. I'm sifting through it, so I want to take my time. But for example, in Help Us on the Way, there are two flautists. That means they play the flute. Okay, but the second flute doubles on piccolo. And so what that piccolo is even smaller and goes higher for the third and fourth movement. The third movement is called the Great Elephants, and the fourth movement is called the Terror. And the flautist needs to bring a piccolo to rehearsal and play on the piccolo it's a very short segment for both movements, probably only a minute total of music, but sprinkle different sections. But that means that performer would need to have a second instrument that would have to be warmed up on the second instrument. So that, of course, you would need to pay more for. So these are all some of the micro details I'm now thinking about the payment, because what I want is to have a really clear idea of the true cost and to have a buffer zone with that, because it's kind of like, construction, like those costs add up, all these other things come up in. So I want to have a really, really clear idea of the cost and the time commitment and all that before I go looking for money. Now, I would like to talk about the third rail, or the really controversial thing that I think needs to be addressed. I want to do a whole separate video articulating my views on the matter. And again, this is something that triggers people, so you have to be cautious. So it seems like I'm caving in just by giving a warning. But it rhymes with trace and starts with peace. But first, I want to just talk a little bit more about my vision for the Orchestra of Barneyjmusic. If you've been following the channel, you know this idea has been germinating. What I see are three components to it. So the first component are performances of my own works. Okay, for example, Help Us on the Way for orchestra. It'd be great if an orchestra, I didn't have to go, I could spend the time just building, a community around Help Us on the Way. I also have Salambo, which is an opera ballet. It'd be great if they had an orchestra and I could start composing for the orchestra and then use those recordings, even if it's not the best recording, right? But send those sample recordings to opera companies, say, hey, these are the ideas we have, and we have something real. It's not just me talking, it's like real content. Like, oh, wow, that sounds really cool. Okay. Or, for example, Salambo has a ballet inside of it. And I am thinking of doing a separate version that's just ballet, just a condensed version, because not all ballet companies don't have the budget for that. And it'd be great if I can contact ballet companies to say, here are the samples we have. Okay, and then it'd be easier also to get funding to, collaborative effort, or at least to excite them. Okay, also, I have Paradise Lost, which is an oratorio that I have stopped talking about further now because I just can't work on it. But for that, I hear lots of brass. I don't know if it would be a full orchestra, but it'd be great if we had an orchestra and then I could invite choruses to work with the orchestra, right? How great. In New York City, you have access to orchestras, but a lot of choruses in Jersey, they don't get to perform with an orchestra, okay? And I think it would be wonderful if we have that collaborative spirit. Also, what I envision with the Orchestra Barneyjmusic is I give a lot of opportunities for composers and conductors. I think there are a lot of composers and conductors who do not gotten a fair shake. I think they're, I hate to go there, but we got to go there. I don't think a lot of the competitions are fair. I think there is a lot of bias going on, even if it's in the spirit of a good name. It's all for good. It's for a good cause, but there still is bias, and I think a lot of composers and conductors do not believe that they will get a fair shake. And so what I envision is like holding competitions, but having like really clearly like this is what we're actually looking for. If I have a competition and I want to perform a new work, I think I'll be explicit saying, but just so you know, this work has to be something that a general public can appreciate, okay? So that way a composer who is writing something very esoteric or something very for a select few is not going to put all this time and effort when they're not going to have a shot from the start. I think they need to be clear. I think a lot of, I also would like to do certain opportunities more targeted. Okay, so we're looking for, I think there's, for example, it'd be nice if there's a competition where I say, okay, we want something really good, but we're also looking for people that have talent, but it's clear it hasn't been fully realized, and this opportunity could help them, right? So there's a lot I want to do with that, as well as conductors who usually often don't have access to orchestras, and so they can't send out samples of them conducting because they have never been able to get to the orchestra. And unless you go to Juilliard or Indiana or one of these really, really top conservatories, you just don't get that chance. Okay, and especially what I found out in Jersey, a lot of these youth orchestras, it seems like many of them, not all of them, a lot of the conductors, I'm sure, are very good, but they didn't even get a degree in conducting. They were in music education and they worked within, they learned on the go. So what I would like with the Orchestra of Barneyjmusic is to be attuned to that not everyone goes to school and gets the official credentials, but it doesn't mean that they don't have talent. And they might have more talent because they actually had to learn on the go and didn't have this safe, theory-bound way of learning things. The final component of the orchestra that I'm envisioning is education. So two of the main programs we have right now are Harmony for the General Public and What's a Fugue. Go ahead and check them out. But I would love to have an orchestra so then I can show things in harmony and invite people. I'm like, hey, listen to that. Like listen to the bassoons right here. Listen to the sound of this chord. It's very difficult when it's me on piano, because piano is not my primary instrument, but also it's very abstract. But then to have an actual orchestra and people can connect with it, I think it would vastly, vastly increase music appreciation much, much quicker. The immediacy would be there. And of course, if this orchestra was to exist in the first place, it would mean that we had successfully generated an actual demand for music in New Jersey or in the arts in general. I do want to talk about funding of the orchestra, but first I want to talk about the third rail. So a number of people, very well-meaning, and I'm not the least offended by what they're saying because it is true what they're saying, but I want to make the record straight, though I would like to make it maybe a separate video as well, have suggested that the quickest way to get opportunities in America is through race. In other words, that as someone who is Black, I can benefit from opportunities in America because of this so-called racial reckoning that we seem to be going through. Okay. For example, there are competitions that are targeted specifically for Black composers or Black musicians or organizations as well. And they say basically what people tell me, and these are people in the field, they're very well-meaning, is there's no money right now, but there is money for minorities. Okay. And you need to get Help Is On The Way performed, so this is the way forward. To be honest, I have always been against this, but I have, it's not about the pride. I just really don't believe in this. I don't believe in this. I don't think that there are limitations on race in America, in the arts, okay? Especially in New Jersey, I do not think that is a severe reality, and it's certainly not the case for myself, okay? I do not feel limited by race. I do not think of myself as a black composer. I don't consider myself a black composer. I am a composer who happens to be black, okay? So with that said, I do not feel comfortable pursuing these opportunities. And again, everyone who suggests to me privately, they're saying it, there's no malicious intent. It is really because that they know this is where the money is. However, I do not feel comfortable proceeding in this manner. A, because I don't believe in it, and B, I have heard Help Is on the Way, and I know it is greater than any of this, okay? And I don't want to speak anymore on the issue for other people. Maybe they feel like they need these opportunities. I feel like I want to be judged for the work itself, okay? On the merits, on the accomplishments. And if that means I do not get an opportunity, then so be it. I will say I have tried, okay, I feel pressure, okay, try to apply, and I can never follow through. My heart is not in it. So in regards to race-based opportunities, I do not see myself pursuing them for the future. And this is not meant to be political. It is just representative of my personal beliefs. Very good. Now I'd like to talk about the funding of the orchestra. So 2 ideas have come to me. One, this is the ideal, and this is what I truly want, but it's going to take a lot more work, is to make it so the arts are financially profitable. What does that mean? It does not mean that we're changing the music, okay? We're definitely doing Beethoven and Bach, but we need to build more demand, show why it's so special. I'm trying to do it on this channel. I think, like I was saying, with Help Is on the Way, showing the process, like showing every second, okay, here's the rehearsal. Look at this behind the scenes. Look at this. And making it, glorifying it the way you would with a making of a music video. I think that is one of the ways. And I think there's also a case to be made with parents, if you're concerned about your children, all these ugly influences out there on various social media, that the arts is a way forward. Okay, so what I see ultimately is that just there is a commercial, it is profitable for the arts. For example, if once an orchestra programs Help Us on the Way, I'm going berserk, I'm going to advertise like crazy. And if we fill up the hall to maximum capacity, or there's a waiting list, then that sends a signal that it is in their financial interest to program Help Us on the Way, or that the arts can be financially profitable. So that is kind of what I see. I see there being lots of educational videos for sale, or recordings for sale. I don't know. It's still very fledgling. And again, I may not be successful. If there is no demand for my services, then that is what it is. I cannot force the public to see the beauty that is Help Us on the Way, or the vision I have for the orchestra of Barneyjmusic. Another idea came up to me very recently, and I find it very interesting. And so, as you know, I am very, very wary of donations, okay, because of the tyranny that is donations in America. Because what happens is the donors, it's usually a couple people or just very large organizations, really control what we can and cannot do. And so what ends up happening, if you're funded by big oil, well, then obviously you're not going to criticize big oil. You can't do it, okay? And so it creates this scenario where one group has way too much power. And we've seen a number of cases where artists were, got into flack for their personal opinions, social opinions on social matters, opinions on political matters, and then were forced to apologize or say things they don't believe, or were just totally lost their jobs because the donors have way too much power. Okay, but what has occurred to me, and this is inspired by something I saw in America. I lived 5 years in France, so I have to always specify this is America. Is a couple election cycles. Well, and don't worry, I'm not going to be talking about politics here, but there were some candidates running for office who said, you know what, we don't want to be funded by these, these special interests, right? Because it prevents us from taking the stance that we really believe in. We want to take certain, bold positions that have the backing of the people, but that's not going to be possible if we're funded by, a special interest. And so these candidates were funded by the people. And, there's a whole nother question, how effective was that in terms of the positions they took? That's not beyond discussion, but the point is they were funded by the people. And so what I was thinking is it could be donation-based, but really like a wide plethora, because what I'm most concerned about is too much power in one group. I think it's very scary, because what's going to happen is at some point artists are going to say controversial things, okay? They're going to speak off the cuff, they're going to give an opinion, they're going to actually say the opinion, they're going to actually speak the truth. And then what's going to happen is the donors going to be like, oh my God, I can't handle this, and they take away their jobs, and then we're forced to constantly walk on eggshells, and we can't live like that. Okay, so what I was thinking is like a donation, but again, there would need to be a real interest. Okay, there has to be a real interest in this, and I do not yet see the evidence, but this is also very new. So a donation, an orchestra where you have, like, let's say, 5,000 people, 6,000 people contributing monthly or something, or 8,000 people or something, and it may even be that some people can't attend the concerts, but they really believe in the vision. That is another thing I thought about recently. Just occurred to me. But either way, until I see that there's actually, widespread support or interest, you can't force it. I can't force this on the people, but it is a vision I have that I will be developing. That is all I have to say on the matter. Have a good day. All right, my wonderful subscribers, if you remember in the last video at the very end, we had a private conversation in which I shared the real reason why I insist on June 2024 for the world premiere of Help Us on the Way for Orchestra, despite the fact that it's totally unreasonable and impractical. And in the words of one viewer, arrogant. Now, I don't know if they said arrogant in regards to that. And you'll remember I basically said, well, check out the video. But in it, I articulated a dream I had, not a nighttime dream, but a vision that came to me, which I'd like to expand upon. But first, I would like to share with you an idea I had that sounds so amazing, which will further necessitate having our own orchestra, which is the Orchestra of Barneyjmusic. Imagine I composed a fugue that is an opera, or an opera that is a fugue. In other words, imagine an opera, you go to the opera, and it's a fugue. Now, if you don't know what the fugue is, check out What the Fugue Series. But imagine you went to, and the whole thing was a fugue, or like each piece was a fugue. I just think that just sounds so awesome. But it could be one of those things like the idea is more interesting than the actual sound. It still has to, it seems like a lot of work, and you have to find a text that would really work. You need a simple text. And I kind of feel like it would be like a comedic kind of, because it's how ridiculous. It's so, why? But I think that's what makes beautiful art, is like, didn't have to happen. So that's just something I just thrown out there. Let me know what you think, if you think that's cool or not. And again, for that, we need the orchestra, okay? No way I'm going to try to pitch that to opera companies, okay? That we need our own orchestra, and we could do it on our own terms. I'd like to expand upon the vision. So as I mentioned, I had a dream, and I heard Help Was on the Way for Orchestra performed. And what I want to talk about now, I talked about in this episode called Raw Naked Glory, when my orchestra piece talked to me, and I'll talk about it again, is I saw Help Us on the Way performed, and it was greater than what I ever imagined it to be. Okay, greater. And I was in the hall, and it was so strange, there were no people. There were people. Yes, there were people in the hall. But you had no awareness of the people, because there was one collective, like, silence or, like, listening energy. Okay, everyone was listening. And it was just, everyone was tuned to one. It's like, when a country all gets behind one idea, hopefully it's for good, then it's just everyone is one, and that's what it felt like. And everyone was just like, hearing the music, and I just remember how relaxing that was, And it was just for the second movement that goes, I don't play it right now. And it was just so calming and peaceful, and it's just like you felt like you're on vacation, but you're just in a hall hearing this beautiful, beautiful music. So have a wonderful day.